G'day, Bomber fans. Well, the Dons have now lost 4 on the trot. Essendon go down to the Dockers up west, 41 points in the end. Pretty standard result, you know. I don't think there's anyone too surprised by the margin. But yeah, despite it being a pretty convincing loss, I left looking at the future a little brighter, and maybe also looking at the past and current a bit the opposite of brighter. You know, I think this game so far to me is the biggest indication that we've got so much going right on our list, but also so much going wrong. So, really interesting game. Plenty to be happy about. Plenty to be really unhappy about in a lot of ways. So yeah, lots to talk about. Let's get into it. Remember to leave your votes down in the comments below. Quarter by quarter recap. The first, we started off well. I know that sounds weird to say. The Bombers didn't get off to a slow start. We hit the scoreboard early. We led for large parts of that first quarter. We had control over the game. We were defending the field really well, forcing Freo wide. Our kicking inside 50 was elite. Nate Caddy turned into prime Iniesta going forward. But then late, we let the Dockers get a little bit of momentum back their way, and they made us pay. They didn't have to work as hard for their goals. I thought for the most part of that quarter, we were the better team, but we just dropped our heads, which is a big theme of the game. The second, it was an arm wrestle early. The Dockers were getting field position. We were hanging in. Peter Wright gets a chance inside 50 to put us within 6 points and misses, and then the Dockers go up and kick 3 goals on the run. It was just deflating. They built a buffer. Archer May and Lamont Luala gave us highlights to rile up the away fans, but the Dockers managed to respond. They just looked the better team. We had our moments. There were highlights again, but the Dockers were, just the better team out there in a pretty spicy contest in that second quarter. They led by 16 points at halftime. The third was really frustrating. We had control of the game for large parts. Tracy kicks one early, but then for about 10 minutes, we've got the ball where we want it. We're getting chances, but we're just not taking them. Senior players missing important chances, Gresham, Guelphy, and then the Dockers go out and kick 3 goals in a row to end the quarter. And it went from a potential 2-goal lead to the Dockers being up by 31 points at the Premiership quarter break. And the game, that's where it was lost. And then the last, it's already done by this stage. We got a few goals back on them early-ish. May got his second. Lawal got his second as well in the quarter. Great to see them up and about. We fought hard to get 3 goals. The Dockers also got 3. It was a pretty even quarter, but they were really wasteful in the end, really, which made us look better in that term. I guess it kind of balanced out because we were really wasteful early. But in the end, the Dockers won by 41 points, pretty comfortably, I think we can all say. But as I said in my preview, I was never going to be too worried about the scoreboard. So let's talk about the game and what the general vibe is from it. All right, well, how was it won? How was it lost? You'd have to be a pretty insane forward line to win a game of footy where you're down 23 inside 50s. In the end, it was 57 to 34. That came from the midfield dominance from the Dockers. 44 hitouts to 26, so that was a big reason. Clearances to 26. 17 centre clearances to 8. 53 hitouts to 24. Luke Jackson had 18 hitouts to advantage and also had 10 clearances, so that's 28 times where he is directly, he's a direct result of the footy clearing congestion for his side. Our midfielders were just not getting first usage, and they weren't doing enough to read Jackson's taps, I thought, and stop the Dockers getting a run out, which, to be fair, is hard with the advantage that Jackson and that midfield had. Realistically, the Dockers were always going to win that midfield battle. Jackson was bullying Vigo, and I'll get to Vigo later because I'm really pumped about him. But the kid's 19, he's a twig compared to Jackson, playing his first game, not even close to being fully developed against one of the best rucks in the league. Our midfield was taught a massive lesson from that advantage. In the end, it was just the Dockers getting more explosive chances out of stoppages and getting serious territory from that, and that's what won them the game. For most of it, in open play, we were forcing the Dockers into pretty boring sideways footy, defending the ground really well. We managed to get some territory ourselves and make the most out of it at times. Some of our use going inside 50 was really promising early, and I think if that territory battle was even, this game is a really close one. But in the end, we just had too much to work against. The Dockers had so many guys playing AFL Evolution on easy mode. Luke Jackson had 48 hitouts, 21 touches and 3 goals. Sarong had 35 and 2 goals. Jordan Clark 33 and almost 600 metres gained. Luke Ryan 32 and led the ground for intercepts. Tracy kicked 3, Bolton 2. They had too many of the best players on the field. So as I like to do in this little period when we've got all these injuries is going through the controllables and the uncontrollables. So Luke Jackson having a big game on Vigo, that is uncontrollable. There's nothing we can really do about that. We can't be mad at Scott or Vigo for the circumstances there. I think we all understand that. The key forwards for Fremantle having a big day. I actually don't even think they really did too much. I mean, Tracy got a few goals later on, but I mean, how many marks did they have inside 50? Around 5 or so. So that's really solid. You know, I thought some of the under pressure forwards like Blackiston and Pryor, although they made some mistakes at times, were really solid on their direct matchups. I thought our forward line didn't get a look in. You know, that is uncontrollable with the midfield battle, so that is one aspect of it. But that was also probably the most promising zone of the night, you know, despite there being limited chances. But yeah, I think, again, things we can control, you know, that midfield mix just didn't look right. Merritt is failing to shake a tag. He's being used everywhere but the guts and not really having an impact. We rack up the peel, you know, but those high ball winners aren't having the impact of a Sarong or a Brayshaw for Freo. And while, you know, I think while we're talking negatives, we got to talk about the senior players, because this game, and I'm going to talk about this a bit, because this game is proof that we are doing the right thing by rebuilding, because there are some players on our list right now, in our team right now, who are just not good enough to be in a premiership side in the future. And I'm not going to name those players. What I will do is name the players who really disappointed me tonight. All of them are senior players. So Jade Gresham, that's a big one. Peter Wright and Matt Guelphy in the forward line as well. You know, those three actually, Gresham, Wright and Guelphy. I thought the forward line was our best zone and the senior players were not standing up. So that is really promising for the kids doing all the work. But those three, you just needed more out of them. And then you've got Zach Merritt, who had some unreal moments by foot, but he's just not getting around it enough. Is he 100%? I don't know. Like I couldn't tell you. He doesn't look it. Archie Perkins, I don't know what's happening here. Like, his start to the year was so promising in his role, and now I just don't see him in our AFL side anymore. Like, I don't know what he's giving us, especially as the sub. I thought those guys just really did not do enough. And then you've got guys for the most part, these guys were doing well, but they just had some shocking moments in the game. McGrath, Parrish, Caldwell, all probably, you know, mostly had good games, like probably pass marks, but let themselves down in important moments that really could have lifted the team. McGrath, I don't know what he was doing having a tea party in defence when he was caught holding the ball. Caldwell's out of the full going forward when we had a million options inside 50. And I know that, you know, young players are making mistakes too. Clark is case in point. He made mistakes. But the senior players are doing it too much for, I guess, what they should be. You know, if you go through our best players on the night and our worst players, the best is dominated by kids who are not they shouldn't be ready to be playing footy, and they are playing better footy than our senior players, I think. And then you've got the worst players, and it's dominated by the senior players. And that is really the frustrating thing about this game. It is just further proof that we really made a horrible decision by keeping our list manager on with us for so long. Like, he did make some good calls. You know, we wouldn't have Caddy without him. We wouldn't have Roberts, Martin. But how many players in this game that weren't at their best were Dodoro picks? And it's just proof that we were in need of a rebuild. If this game proved anything to us fans, it is that we needed a rebuild with a new list manager, and that is what we're doing. Let's talk about some of these kids, because there is a lot to work with. So the base 5, these are the guys who I think, you know, stick with us even when reinforcements come around. You've got Angus Clark. I thought he was busy, even if a bit wacky by foot. I thought it was probably maybe his worst game of the year, but he was still, you know, solid, 20 plus touches, really involved. Johnson was the opposite. He didn't get heaps of the ball, but had some awesome defensive efforts. Those two, I think, stick around in our defense for the rest of the year, hopefully. And even not, they can go on a wing. You know, the next three, though, these guys, Roberts is just a player already. He's a rising star contender. He is awesome. Archie Roberts, he's a future leader of the club. Isaac Kako, I want to talk about his game. So he had the game-high pressure acts. That's the whole field, by the way. Game-high 27. His work in close and personal was awesome. He got on the scoreboard again. And Nate Caddy, I mean, this guy, like, spoiler alert, but he's in the votes. The ball was barely down that forward line, and whenever it was, he was doing everything. He was so good, Nate Caddy. He was so impactful when the ball was around him. He is a player. Like, I think we're realizing just how good some of these kids are going to be. And this game is the first time for me where all of the kids have linked up and really shown promise at the same time. Because then you've got the next group of guys. You've got Luman Lowell. I thought he was going to be delisted at the start. Even a month ago, I thought he was going to be delisted. But some of his defensive efforts, he's actually listed amongst the best players on the official AFL website, by the way, for us. So yeah, and it might be a stretch, but he is looking all right, and maybe he's someone we persist with. Archer May, I don't want to see him out of the team anytime soon. Him and Caddy actually have some good synergy up there. He kicked 2 goals. But Vigo Vicentini, this guy, yes, he was monstered, all right? He was bullied by Luke Jackson. But I am pumped. We have got a player here for the future. He was always going to be, he was always going to lose this battle. You can't be annoyed by Jackson's dominance. He was thrown in the deep end. But his will to compete and some of his moments, that tackle where he almost knocked himself out was crazy just before halftime. His intercept marks down back. I think only him and Pryor for us had multiple intercept marks. Yeah, this guy's going to play a lot of footy for Essendon. I'd like to see him more before the year ends because he looks really promising for the future. I know he got monstered, but that was a really promising debut. Probably after Clark this year, and I can't even think of who else, but after Clark, that was probably the most promising debut for me. I think we've got a real player there for the future, and that's the most pleasing thing about this game. I think this is probably the best game we've had from a youth component. That is why I'm not more annoyed by this loss, because every single young player stood up in some way. They all looked up for it, even if they were beaten. We do have a lot to work with for the future. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny game of footy, because when I'm thinking about the positives, I'm really energetic, I'm happy, I'm glass half full. Then I think of the negatives, and I'm just down in the dumps. I'm probably more upset with this game than I was with the Geelong game, which feels insane to say. But I just think it's probably because we left a close game out there, or maybe even a win. Or maybe a win's a stretch. I take that back. Not a win. But, we were in this game for a long time. We were giving it a crack. We had control over large parts of the game. But the thing that let us down, it was a combination of our system and structure just not holding up over 4 quarters. That's expected. Moments from Blackiston and Clark and Lowell, like young players that, we like and they're having a crack, but they're just raw. That we can expect. Our system's never going to be consistent with the team we have. There are some things that are just a step too far. But it's what happens when we are out of control that I just don't like. We let up goals too easy. We struggle to pin passes together. We succumb to pressure. And a lot of the time, it is leaders or players that we expect more from. And look, I've already said this once or twice already, but I want to reiterate it. This is proof that we needed to rebuild. Some of the leaders and best players aren't good enough to be best players. And by the way, that's not me saying we should trade them. It may mean that when the kids develop and grow in importance, those leaders that are now leaders are given roles that suit them better. McGrath is a perfect example of that for me. I know that everyone wants him delisted. I think in 3 years' time, when Reid and Roberts are using the footy and Johnson in the back half, McGrath doesn't have as much responsibility to be that user that he is. He just locks down on his direct opponent and keeps him out of the game like he does at his best. Merritt and his tags, maybe soon those tags transfer to Nick Martin or someone and free Merritt up to use the ball around the ground. He can roam around without having so much attention. Or maybe it is the case of a delisting or a trade bait. What do we do with Gresham? What do we do with Perkins? I think this game is proof that we're doing the right thing at the moment. It doesn't look pretty, but we are doing the right thing, But also, it showed that there is much more to be done. There is no way that we're going to win anything anytime soon with the amount of just dead weight and, I don't know, players that should be important to us but really aren't on our list. I think there are clearly players that do not fit in right now, and they won't in the future as well. So let's see what happens with them. Big off season. All in all, frustrating loss. But also plenty of promise in there as well with the kids stepping up. It was the kids who were impressing me most. So let's look at the votes. All right, my votes. This is going to look odd. So 1 vote to Jai Caldwell. I thought he was the best of our midfielders, but to be fair, our midfield got torched. He had some great moments, had some shocking moments. In the end, though, he was probably the sole leader who stood up, I think, the most. He could easily come into that leadership group next year, Jai Caldwell. 2 votes to Archie Roberts. This guy could come into the leadership group next year. What an absolute steal. This guy's cemented in our future plans. He is a genuine contender for the Rising Star Award, I think. But also, so is this guy, Nate Caddy. 3 votes. Look, 1 goal, 15 touches. It doesn't look like a 3-vote game, but he was everything going forward. Obviously, we barely had the ball in our forward half, but, some of his efforts, that pack mark for his goal, that drill pass to Kako, the cheeky one to Wright, 2 goal assists, 8 score involvements, the equal most for the Bombers, the second most on the field after Luke Jackson, even the ones that don't count, like that little tap to Lowell that set up Gresham's goal. The ball was barely in the forward half, but whenever it was, Caddy was electric. He really made us a much, much better team. And if you take out Roberts, you take out Caldwell, you take out our other best players, it's not as noticeable if you take out Nate Caddy. I thought he was our most important player of the night, and that is crazy to say for a 19-year-old. It is up and up from here. He looks awesome. Our role player, Will Setterfield, look, I thought he got run ragged a bit and probably didn't even have a good game, but, his efforts to get up after every knock, he had 3 separate incidents where he was in the rooms or on the bench after a big knock or something, and he didn't back down. So, yeah, great stuff. I love that. And, yeah, that's all, really. Those are my votes. Leave your votes down in the comments below. Let me know what you think down in the comments as well. Are you guys happy with the game? Are you unhappy? I don't know how to feel. Like, it's... The way I see it, there is plenty of work that needs to be done. There's not a lot. There are some players that I don't know where they are for the future for us. There's plenty of work that needs to be done with them, but also there is plenty to work with. The kids really do go all right. I thought they were awesome against the Dockers. They're pretty much every single young player we had. So yeah, cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and go Bombers.